Hurricane Idalia is knocking on the door of the Sunshine State. Her impacts are being felt across the peninsula and extending into the Florida Panhandle as she approaches her ever-anticipated landfall. Let's take a look tonight on Weather Center Nazario on who could experience what, who could see the littlest of the storm, and who could see the most, to include a number of the different impacts we're going to see throughout the night tonight and into tomorrow, guys. Like, share, subscribe to the page if you haven't done so already, and hit the notification bell. We still have another 24 hours to go before we can hopefully put Idalia behind us. In the meantime, guys, let's take a glance at what we have in store. Okay, for those of you watching this evening, I'm telling you right out of the gate, I do not want you on YouTube too long this evening as Hurricane Idalia bears down and prepares for landfall, okay? So we're going to really quickly expedite the pace of this video. Taking a look at infrared off the west coast of Florida, there is indeed a hurricane. This is Idalia in all of her glory. We are at 100-mile-per-hour sustained winds in the center, and we've consistently seen a downward trend in her central pressure. We haven't seen rapid intensification that we've been forecasting for about the last 12 to 18 hours. We believed once she got well clear of the Cuban island to her southeast, we would see a rapid intensification trend into a major hurricane at this point in its life cycle. We haven't gotten there yet, and I believe it is in part due to some dry air intrusion. You can see a bit of weakening and waning in the cloud cover along the east and northern portions of the center, and I think that is why we are not seeing the eye come together. We have some pretty good thunderstorm activity wrapping up in the eye wall, and base reflectivity radar has indicated the eye wall is entirely shut. So she has organized. There is a pretty substantial core formed in her center. However, we have not seen an expeditious deepening trend that we were forecasting, which could be a good thing. However, there is still quite a bit of water to cover before she makes landfall somewhere just to the east of Apalachicola in the greater Big Bend area of North Florida. From here, let's go over to the radar. We've had some feeder bands already working their way through. This is National Weather Service base reflectivity, the mosaic for most of the southeast. I have it predominantly over the Florida Peninsula because this is where the initial bands of feeder activity are going to roll through. We had one come through earlier today. I went outside and documented it a little bit. If you do not follow me on Instagram, WXCenter_Nazario. I've got some storm chasing coverage. I've got some live coverage popping up on that feed as well if you want to take a look and you don't want to get it all from simply YouTube. But there she is off the coastline. You can see that eye wall is closed up, albeit fairly weak. We don't have too tremendous of thunderstorm activity in close proximity to that center, and it doesn't look like we are seeing a well-defined eye just yet. So again, I repeat, this could be a good thing. Can we still see some intensification between here and landfall? 150%, and a lot of us are anticipating it. National Hurricane Center still predicts we will have a major hurricane center knocking on the door of northern Florida here later tonight and into tomorrow morning. I want to take a look at Storm Prediction Center. At this point in time, we are no longer forecasting. We've moved into nowcast criteria. Between the next 6 to 8 hours, everything is going to go downhill if it hasn't already done so for your area. You can see we are under a slight risk of severe weather, marginal down further south into Florida. This is post-landfall as she transitions up to the northeast through the Carolinas. Looking at day one, you can see the slight risk along the coastline predominantly, but we still have a marginal risk for severe weather across the peninsula to its entirety. I want to stress this even more so. We have a 5% chance that you will see some tornadic activity over western central Florida into the Panhandle area, and a 2% risk across the remainder of the state. We've already had a few tornado-warned storms out there, so the possibility is only going to elevate itself as we go past sunset into the early morning hours of Wednesday, and as the sun rises tomorrow, we could see even more intense banding activity as the storm transitions to the northeast. Let's take a quick glance at HRRR. As you can see, this is the most recent model run. We had the first band work its way through. Along the eastern side of this storm, we are going to see a lot more wraparound moisture, and the most recent runs, to include some of the recent reconnaissance data as well, have suggested this storm could kind of wobble a bit more to the west. Good and bad. Bad for those still in the direct line of sight of the center of circulation. Good for us because this will help to relieve some of the intensity in terms of the feeder banding and the tropical storm force winds we could see into interior parts or interior counties of central and south Florida. As you can see, though, however, we are not going to be spared, and a lot of these trailing thunderstorms along the backside of this storm are still going to be rotational. They are going to drop heavy amounts of rain in a very, very short period of time. Lots of cloud-to-ground lightning again. Check out my Instagram. There was a lot of frequent lightning strikes earlier today with just wave 1 of this storm, and I anticipate quite a bit more. So be aware of standing water collecting on roadways, deep water collecting on roadways at that, because this rain's going to come down tremendously all at once. It's not going to wax and wane as we typically see with daytime convection. It's going to be all or nothing, and this is going to be an all or nothing event over the next 8 to 12 hours until we can get her far enough to the north to no longer pose an influence on our weather activity. Guys, so like I said, we're rolling through this video. We're going to get you through in and out quick. I want to get you up to speed on what to expect. Conditions are going to continue to go downhill and stay there once we get to about 8 to 10 o'clock Eastern Standard Time for the state of Florida, and we are only going to see conditions worsen through the overnight hours until the sun comes up tomorrow. We may finally begin to see some relief. Taking a look at the model viewer, what we have here are forecasted max wind gusts. I want to pay close attention to this model, one of many, as this storm prepares for landfall. So 36 hours from now, you can see the brunt of this storm has moved downstream. With this western trend we've seen, it looks like interior parts of the state could see anywhere between 35 to 40 knots of wind. So we are still anticipating tropical force winds as we go through tonight and into tomorrow before they finally begin to diminish as she moves further off to the north. This is not likely to change. I think everyone's going to get a little taste of this storm. Do with that as you please. I know the internet is a joyous place, but everyone's going to get a taste of Idalia as we go forward in time. 60 hours from now, we should be in the clear. However, some of the forecast models have hinted at some kind of a reflection of Idalia circling back around as she gets stuck underneath a ridge of high pressure centered over the western Atlantic and maybe could come back through as something. I'm not going to say what that something could be. Some models indicate no more than some tropical rains to give us some relief from the heat that's supposed to come back in post-Idalia. Could be something in the lay of a tropical depression, a tropical storm. I will keep you posted on that, but right now, let's focus on primary impacts. So everyone's going to get a taste of some tropical storm force winds unless you are in the greater southeastern quadrant of South Florida. Maybe tropical depression winds at that if they haven't already started, and those actually should be tapering off as we go through sunset because you're so far behind this storm. We're not going to spend too much time on actual precipitation amounts. I will come out with more information, more static images on YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok for you guys to digest if you follow me on those platforms. Again, WXCenter_Nazario. We're going to look at precipitable water real quick because this is going to give us a rough estimate of how much rainfall we can anticipate from this storm. And if you look at these values, the blue shades here are above 3¼ to 3½ inches of water content in this storm. Some of the forecasted values as she moves further inland over northern Florida into Georgia, South Carolina, we're looking at possibly anywhere between 5 to even 10 localized instances of 10 inches of water accumulation to couple with the storm surge that we're already seeing and forecasted inundation amounts along the north and western sides of the state. So we have a lot of water associated with this storm, and I think that's going to be the primary concern. With her transitioning so fast off to the northeast, winds are only going to be a concern for a marginal period of time. It's going to be the inundation we see both via the rainfall and the storm surge and the swells we get off of this storm, especially in that Big Bend area, because this is an unfavorable direction for a storm of this intensity to come in at. So as you go through time, you can see for a brief instance there, even the Euro is expecting a little bit more intensification before moving inland. So you guys are going to get pummeled with the wrath of Idalia for at least a 6-hour period. She's going to be in and out quick as she picks up forward momentum, and then we're good. Then, as you can see, before we hit the 30-hour mark, we're already on the back end of this storm. This is valid for 18 Zulu. Tomorrow, 18 Zulu, our time is 2 p.m. So by 2 p.m., conditions can start to go down in a favorable direction for most of the peninsula of Florida. Northern Florida, I can't guarantee that for you. It depends on if she picks up any forward momentum as we go overnight tonight. But overall, this is going to be a huge rainmaker. A lot of us are going to feel some of the wind effects in the form of tropical storm force gusts and hurricane force winds closer to that center of circulation, especially since the wind field is favoring that eastern flank, that right front quadrant that we always emphasize with these hurricanes. So, we're going to get ready to close out the video already. I just want us to turn our attention to the future. The future is uncertain, but I'm looking at the calendar, and it is August 29th. We are not even in September yet. The peak hurricane season, the uppermost portion of the peak, is sometime in the 2nd to 3rd week of September, and then it slowly starts to transition downward from there. I want us to go forward in time. There are two main events. We have Idalia coming into the northern portions of Florida, and then Franklin rapidly moving off into the northern Atlantic as still a very major, potent hurricane. Bermuda needs to be watching out. It's getting closer and closer with time, and the model trends want to get it in close proximity to you all. We could see some good storm surge, rip current conditions, and even some elevated winds if he comes close enough on his track off to the east before moving up to the northern portions of the Atlantic. No further harm outside of potentially eastern Canada if he makes it that far to the north as an organized tropical entity. 144 hours out, I want you to look off of the continent of Africa. We have a few ensemble members popping off. This is 6 days from now. We're going to go forward 1 or 2 more days. This is 7 days out. We're beginning to see a little bit more ensemble agreement. And folks, I'm going to save the suspense for a later date. Let's go out to 300 hours. We may have something on the horizon. We may have something. And she's headed in a general direction that doesn't look too good for the Caribbean, for the Bahamas, and the Southeast already being ravaged by Hurricane Idalia. So let's not get lulled into a false sense of security. Once she's done, that isn't the wrap of hurricane season. We have to make sure we keep our binoculars and our eyes peeled because this has been trending. This bad boy in here, this has been trending. I think Jose is going to get the name, so we may have the K name coming on the horizon very soon. I'm going to keep on a lookout on this. My head is on a swivel, not only with what we have going on outside in our backyard now, but for the future's sake. Because we still have a long trek of peak hurricane season to get through, and I do not like how the ensembles have day-to-day been trending upwards of a major hurricane reappearing after Franklin and Idalia have done their thing and become nothing more than a mere memory. So, we've looked into the future, we've looked into the next 8 hours. Let's begin to wrap up episode 14. And thus concludes episode 14 of Weather Center Nazario. Folks, for those of you tuning in this evening, I can wholeheartedly admit I never would have foreseen this coming. I didn't think we'd only be 14 episodes deep into this new YouTube channel to where I'd have the opportunity to document and cover a storm of this magnitude for you all to witness. I graciously thank every single one of you. I don't miss an individual out there who have tuned in, subscribed, liked, or done something in any way, shape, or form to help influence getting my channel out for those of you to watch all these strings of updates that have unfolded over the last few days since Hurricane Idalia took shape in the Western Caribbean. And I can't stress this enough, if you are in the path of this storm as she continues to intensify over the eastern Gulf of Mexico before landfall, folks, stay sheltered in place. Hunker down, protect your homes, protect your assets, and most of all, protect your loved ones. Hurricanes are a dime a dozen. We see them multiple times throughout the year, but every single storm that comes ashore, especially at this intensity, is a different case every single time. There is no repetitive story, there is no repetitive experience. Hurricane Idalia is no different, and since day one, since we started to cover it on Weather Center Nazario, she has transcended into something none of us saw coming before it even came to fruition in the Western Caribbean. So with that being said, I hope and pray that I see each and every one of you back for episode 15 tomorrow as we prepare for her to finally blow over and be gone so we can see what the future has in store for us for the rest of this anomalous 2023 hurricane season. Ladies and gentlemen, turn on the notification bell if you haven't done so already. We have a few more updates to get through. We're almost to the end. We just have to get through the next 8 to 12 hours as she bears down on the coastline of the beautiful Sunshine State of Central Florida. But in the meantime, I'll see you soon. This is Weather Center Nazario, signing out.